Hi, my name is Awesome Aguilera, and welcome to WEYT, the show where I find interesting people just like you and discover what's going on between their ears. Now, let's get to know one another. What's going on, everybody? Awesome Aguilera here with another episode of WEYT, and today's mantra is, it's not so much that you are your thoughts. You are the thoughts that you let consume you. And that was said actually by me. I had it written in my notes and I was like, I like that one. I should save it for a later date. And here we go. And today, as you can see, I have a nice smiling face with a beautiful background. And this is Alex DeCarvalho. And the way I've met Alex is through a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours named Janie. And she invited us to be in a mastermind group. And ever since then, I've thought that Alex has always been a great person to bounce ideas off of. And, you know, he's a great mastermind participant. And he's got a very exciting story. See what he's all about. So Alex, that's, you know, the basic of how we started hanging out, but let the people know, you know, who you are, how you identify yourself, how you became who you are, you know, all the fun stuff that makes Alex, Alex.
Thank you for having me on your show. And I can't remember how long ago that first mastermind was. You know, I remember it was in Wynwood
Yeah,
at the butcher shop.
at the butcher
And,
shop.
you know, that must have been like at least 10 years ago, if not more. So it's been a while. I'm Alex. I'm Brazilian and Finnish. My father was Brazilian and my mom's from Finland. My dad was a diplomat. So I grew up in different countries as his posts changed every 2 or 3 years. We'd go to a totally different countries. So I lived in Africa and in Algeria and Ghana, lived in Iran as well, which is where I started my schooling in the French school system. I then lived in Moscow for a number of years and in Brazil. My parents separated and I came to Miami. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was in Miami. So my mom came here with me, and I'm an only child. And so I spent about 10 or 12 years in Miami. And then I went to Europe, did my MBA, and then came back about, you know, I don't know, it's been about 14 years already in Miami. Yeah, I'm currently the honorary consul of Finland
Oh,
in South
wow.
Florida. So I represent Finland. So it's funny. I didn't seek out to be a diplomat, but I ended up being, you know, an honorary diplomat locally. It's a great honor. You know, I did the army in Finland a long time ago, like 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny how life comes around, and here I am serving Finland in another capacity. And you know, professionally, I do digital marketing, so I help clients with digital marketing campaigns. I'm also teaching a course, a 5-week accelerated course in digital marketing to small business owners. There are 45 people in the class. You know, we're halfway through that course. It's super intensive. It's all done on Zoom. Also, I've studied to become a coach in helping people deal with toxic relationships. People
Okay.
helping, you know, there's trauma related to certain types of abuse, narcissistic abuse. You know, a lot of people don't understand what narcissism is, but once you've been through it, you know what it means, and there's trauma associated with it, and there's a real healing journey that happens. It's a painful journey, but getting through it, it's beautiful. What happens once you get to the other side? You know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You know, it's my way of kind of giving back to the world and to people to help them deal with these issues. So
Awesome.
that's all about
So
me.
so with all of that background, it sounds like you have many things that can be engaging your thoughts. What are the top 3 things that have been engaging your thoughts lately?
COVID-19, the stay-at-home orders, how different countries have reacted and responded to this crisis. Everything that comes up about this, you know, it's not only the response, but also the conspiracy theories about the response, also the state of fear that we've been kept in. I think it's legitimate, though. I mean, here we have an invisible threat that we don't know very much about. It is normal to be fearful. However, it seems like we're kept on this constant state of fear, which is probably not normal. On the other hand, you know, I do believe this is serious, and we need all to take protective measures for ourselves, but also help protect other people. It's pretty wild seeing these conspiracy theories or myths come up. You know, I'm all for seeing alternative views of what's going
Yeah,
on. So I have an open mind. There needs to then be some fact checking, like
for
where is
sure.
this theory coming from and what's the agenda of this theory? So if the news media has an agenda, but these theories also have their own agendas. And so it's really lifting the veil on all of it to
Yeah.
see, okay, I'm really responsible for myself, and my family, my mom. And so what is the course of action that will protect us best? And that's, so,
And have you seen any seeds being planted towards something like that being created?
I'm part of a think tank. We're close to 100 people across the world, and we're coming up with our own points of view about this, and we're about to publish it.
Where is it going
Thing.
to be published?
Eventually, we're going to have a website, but there's going to be the different points of views of different people from around the world. So it's a pretty diverse group on what's been happening and what is that future world. So that's also on top of my mind is what is that world we're coming back to? What is that
And
new
and
normal?
when you say that, yeah, when you say coming back to, do you think we are really going back to anything? Because I have this, and this is just a hypothesis in my head, but just the idea of conservation. I understand that that idea is the intentions behind the idea are good, but when it comes to just the universe or whatever you want to call the source, there is no such thing as going back or conserving anything. There's only
Sure.
moving onward. That's the
Absolutely.
only way things can go. When you say,
Absolutely.
when you use a word like conservation, is there a better way we can start to, because me, I'm all about NLP and how we say things matters. So it's not that we're conserving, but we can take the best that we know and still continue to move it forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I acknowledge I used the word going back to, going
Yeah,
back to, and I agree with you. We're not going back to
there's no
anything.
going back
The
ever.
new world has changed.
Yeah,
So it's something different we're going back to. We've been holed up in our own cave, for 2 months, and
yeah.
now we're going back, well, going out into the world. What
Hmm.
does that world look like? But I think more importantly than what does the world look like, what do we want the world to look like? Like,
Yes.
what is that vision that we have of the world we want to go to? Um, and what kind of a better world can we go to? I think so. My point of view has to do with this. We learned that there's no one has our backs. First of all, no one really knows or knew what this COVID-19 was. Like, what are the symptoms? And how do you cure this or how do you help people? And all of this was a developing situation. So the governments didn't really know. There were no plans in place. Some countries had plans in place. Many countries didn't have plans in place. Things like income protection, unemployment, like it took a long time to get to people.
It's
Worked
still
hard to
taking a
get it.
long
Some
time
people,
to get to people.
yeah, some people haven't received anything yet. And so people really found themselves at a loss here, So the government wasn't there to help. Their jobs were not there to help. Look how many people have been, are unemployed. The unemployment rate now is 15%. They're
Yeah.
projected to go up to 30%. I mean, it's incredible. For a country where there's no safety net, it's incredible to be unemployed. The workplace didn't have your back. And then also, for some people, their relationships, their couples, the couples they're in, the people they're with, their significant other
Yeah.
didn't have their back. The rate of domestic abuse went up because people were holed up together. Couples were holed up together for weeks on end. And, narcissistic abuse went up.
Yeah.
Domestic abuse went up. And so people are really feeling like, wow, the government doesn't have my back. My work doesn't have my back. My spouse doesn't have my back. Like, what is going on?
So
And what is
when do you think we have to ask the question, when do I have my own back? Like how do we
exactly
develop
so?
a people that's like, if nobody else is going to be there for me, how can I be there for myself?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of people face their fears and their shadows, like, wow, my work, did I really enjoy my work so much? And why couldn't my work help me through this? And do I really want to go back to a place like that? Or will they even hire me back? Right? So
Yeah.
there's that whole fear, economic fear that people have to chase or face. And then also the spouse, like, is this the person I really want to be with?
Yeah.
Is this abusive person? Like, I didn't, like, now I'm starting to see COVID unmasked who this person is.
Yes.
Um, so there's a lot
And
of
both for good and
unfortunate.
bad, because it's happening both ways. There's probably some couples that have gotten stronger through this, but there's probably a vast majority that are also they're not making it through this. And you must, or you should ask yourself, if you can't make it through what is a tough time, what can you make it through?
Absolutely, yeah. And you're right, for a lot of people, they got closer and to their kids especially.
Yes.
Um, Now, their busy lives. That's another thing people have been thinking about is like, where was my time going to? And what was I spending my money on? Because now that you're holed up at home, you're not spending money the same way, you're not going to the same places, and your busy schedules suddenly are not busy anymore, and you have all this time on your hand, and you have time to spend with your kids. And so people have been reconnecting. So there are a lot of positive things that happened. It also means that when the world opens up, people have gotten used to not spending money in the ways they used to. So
Yeah.
their priorities have changed,
So do
which
you
means
think
that,
that will end up in some sort of deflationary environment where people
well,
have to start now thinking, I need to get my own back, I better start saving a little bit? Now it's not, oh, maybe I'll save one day. Now it's like, no, 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 I need to learn how to save, because if I don't, nobody's got my back. So I got to figure out how to do it for
absolutely.
myself. Hmm.
Absolutely. So I think the importance of saving has now been like hammered into people. Like they better have a plan for whatever happens next.
Yeah.
Don't be caught short-handed. So that is, I think, one thing. I think also consumer priorities have changed. The way they spend money, where they spend money at, where they spend time at has changed. And so businesses need to adapt to it. I think it creates for a slower economic recovery. The fact that millions of people are going to spend money in a different way. It also means that businesses need to adapt their products and services to cater to people. There's really going to be kind of like two tracks of people. People who are like all about individual freedoms and don't want to wear masks and are just going to go into bars and restaurants and as if
Yeah.
nothing had happened.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be other people who, for a few years, are going to be wearing masks, are going to be avoiding places, crowded places, are not going to go to bars and restaurants just because they feel that it's riskier. And so there's going to be two tracks of people. Like if you're a restaurant, you need to be able to cater to people and to really show people that your place is a safe establishment. You're taking care of hygiene and distancing protocols, like all kinds of things. Like I don't know, like what the solution would be, but you need to, as a business, you need to think about that
Yeah.
to create safe environments for your customers.
So I had a question here that I wrote down. Since in your bio you spoke about all the countries that you've been through, how do you think, with all that experience that you've had in different countries, how do you think some of those other countries are going to move onward from this moment, being that they all have a bit of a different perspective?
Yeah, so I taught a course in international marketing at FIU. And really, the fascinating thing about that course is how different cultures and societies value different things. And so, a very concrete example of that is that Eastern cultures, like in China, in Japan, it's all about the collective.
Yeah.
And so, you'll see like people, like families live together. You'll have like the grandparents, the parents, the kids. Sometimes four generations are living together or they're very close, right? Which is a kind of a collective attitude, as opposed to, let's say, the United States, where it's very individualistic. In the US, it's kind of like those Wild West values, individual freedom, self-made people. So it's a different way of viewing the world. And advertising in the US and in Eastern cultures are different through the values that advertising espouses. But it also shows up in the way that these cultures responded to COVID-19. So I won't take China, which is a very kind of like repressive authoritarian regime. So they were able to like lock the country down.
Yeah.
But a country like Japan, Japan has a population of 126 million, and they have a very old population,
Yeah.
one of the oldest populations in the world. I mean, a lot of people over, like let's say 60, 70, 80 years old. So they're very vulnerable to COVID-19, right? And yet, with 126 million people, they never locked down the country. and they only had 850 deaths. 850 out of
Yeah.
126 million people. Compare that to the US, we have 330 million people and 100,000 deaths, right? Japan, we'd have like 1,000 or 1,500 deaths, comparatively. And so this really, for me, highlights some cultural differences. Japan is it's a democracy, it's a free country. They hardly shake hands, they always bow. So
Yes.
they're not hugging and kissing and shaking hands, so less contact. They also, for years, have been wearing masks. Like if you're sick in Japan, you wear a mask out of respect for other people. You don't be
Yes.
coughing and sneezing, so you're going to wear a mask. Also, Japan was very hard hit by SARS,
Yes.
and so they
They have
learned
some
from that.
experience. Yes.
Yeah. And in the US, really, we have this big movement about not wearing a mask. People, it's about my freedom, my individual freedom. I'm not going to wear a mask. People don't know if they're carriers or not, but
Yeah.
they don't want to wear a mask. But they're putting other people at risk, right? And so here we have a case where I would say the reward of pursuing collective goals is more important. Like it outweighs the risks of pursuing your own individual goal.
Part of the show, like on the first episode, I spoke about how one of the things that drives who I am is just the trying to understand of the yin and the yang, right? And in this example that you're giving of the collective and the individual, those are like different examples of the yin and the yang, where doing one thing over the other is probably not that efficient for either. So there has to be somewhere, like say in the middle way. There's got to be something in the middle where that's where you get the most juice out of it. So how do we get, respect for the collective and respect for the individual to kind of come together in a point where they can both work to move onward to a better place?
Absolutely. So, that so the Earth, this planet we're on, is all about the yin and the yang. It's all about polar opposites. It's all about duality. We have the night and the day,
Yeah.
nighttime, daytime. We have hot and cold, high and low. Like any kind of polar opposites exists on this Earth.
But there's also
We
a
have,
spectrum between them, right? Because even
yeah,
if
so
you have
it's,
the night and
yeah.
day, when the sun is rising, you have a spectrum of colors that come. When the sun is setting, you have a spectrum of other colors that, so there is still some stuff in the middle of those polar opposites. So how do we get just humans in general, try not to be so, red and blue, black and white? It's like there's all this stuff in the middle. How can we become more comfortable, or what suggestions might you have that we become more comfortable with exploring the spectrum that's in the middle?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, one of my hobbies or passions is Jungian
Yes.
psychology, Carl Jung.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a group. I've been in this kind of a book club or study group for like 7 or 8 months already.
Yeah.
We started by reading Carl Jung's Red Book,
Yes.
which was published just only 10 years ago, 50 years after his
After his
death.
death. Yes.
Uh, and it's all about Carl Jung and exploring his subconscious and what he saw and how he analyzed it. The thing is that things that trigger you in other people are things
Yeah.
you should examine in yourself. So if you get angry at someone else because of something they said or they're doing or their behavior, like you got to look inside yourself to see, why is that triggering you? Like, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
And is that a repressed part of you? Or like you probably have, to see it in someone else, is probably you have something going on inside you. You have that quality, or you have some trauma related to that quality. For example, I believe that wearing a mask is the the right way to go. I think scientifically it has been proven, and it's also respect to other people.
Yes.
Um, I know I'm not a carrier, but other people don't know that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really cost anything to go into the grocery store and wear a mask and respect other people, and it's fine. It's not like there's worse things in the world than having to wear a
Yeah.
mask while you're in the grocery store. Yeah, it triggers me when people are saying, yeah, it's my individual freedom, I don't have to wear a mask and stuff. I'm like, yeah, man, but it seems like you're being selfish there.
Yeah.
Like, and so, but then I need to see that in myself. Like, why is that really bothering me so much? And is there something I can learn from this? I acknowledge there's good things about individual freedom. So I'm not saying that's bad.
Yeah.
Um, I acknowledge it's good to keep your eyes open and to be awake and woke. Like, are some people manipulating us and keeping us in fear? I agree. Let's look at that, you
Yes.
know? But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, I sure do appreciate that you wear a mask because my mom goes to the
Yeah.
grocery store. She's at risk. I don't know if you're a carrier. I
Yeah.
respect your individual freedom, but hey, man, I love my mom more. So let's try to
There's too many variables we
uh,
don't know about to
right,
this is a thought that just came into my head about a week or two ago. We have the concept that the internet, or let's say Twitter or Facebook, that people are a little, you have trolls and you have people who push a lot of negative energy on online because they have the luxury of being anonymous, right? So you've heard of
yeah,
that theory before. And I wonder to myself, with people having masks out in the real world, what does that do to the anonymity of people? And does that create a foundation for us to treat each other the way we do online because there's more anonymity?
right, yeah, absolutely.
What do you think of that one
Uh,
right there?
So it's funny. I stopped drinking on January 1st, so I've been
Okay.
like 130 days sober, which
And
is a
how are you
huge.
feeling with
I
that?
feel fantastic
Okay.
about that. But my mom had asked me to buy her a bottle of wine. I'm doing the groceries for her just so that she doesn't have to go into the store. So I did that, and I got carded, and I got carded because I was wearing a mask. And
Yeah.
I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, I don't know how old you are. I'm like, oh wow. So yeah, it's
You don't
really
see these gray hairs coming?
yeah. Well, she can see
Yeah.
my gray beard.
It's that baby
So,
face you have, Alex. It's
well, with a mask, you can't really tell what's going on. So yeah, you're right. There's like some kind of anonymity behind the mask, which is really interesting. I mean, people can't tell if you're smiling or not. I mean, they can tell
Mhm.
by your
Your
eyes,
eyes, yeah.
and
But if you have
but
Botox and your eyes can't smile.
yeah. So does that make for more like aggressive society because people can be anonymous behind their masks? That's a good question.
So I
Yeah.
wonder if as we move onward, that's something that's going to sprout out in in the wild of being
Yeah.
outside, as long as we continue to have masks. Now, I would like us to get to the point where we don't have to have masks anymore, but I completely agree with, as long as we don't know, it's better, like they say, to be safe than to be sorry.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, there's all this paranoia that the government is controlling us and everything. Tell me this, if you're wearing a mask, like one of the paranoias is there's like face tracking technology, like videos, like everywhere you go, there's a video looking at you and they can track your face. But now if you're wearing a mask,
They
can they
can't.
actually track you again? So that goes counter to any conspiracy. It's like if the government is trying to control you so much, why would they want you to wear a mask? They can't tell who you are,
Yeah.
right?
Because even our
So there's
phones, right?
lots.
Like our phones, I can't
Yeah,
unlock my face with the mask on. I have to type in my code.
right, right. But I think in Japan they haven't had an issue with masks and people being aggressive and anonymity. Yeah, so I think
hmm
that's
I do like
yeah,
the idea that you said that they have in Japan, that if you know you are sick, be courteous. And if you're going to be out, you wear the mask. And like everybody else doesn't. But if you know you're sick with anything, you're sneezing, you have a runny nose, it's like, hey, just cover it up, because why do you want to put other people at risk just because, just
sure.
because you feel like it? And
Yeah,
that's,
it's a it's a nice humility and sign of respect and consideration for other people.
so
Yeah.
let's transition into the next question I have here, which is the course that you said you were making. Tell us a little bit more about that course and what was, the catalyst towards bringing it out into the world.
So I've taught at University of Miami and FIU as an adjunct, also at Miami-Dade College.
You.
Um, so I've taught social media and digital marketing courses at those institutions. And now I'm teaching it at a place called BizHack, which is a private. I taught the first course prior to COVID, a 12-week course in marketing. And then COVID hit. And so I recreated a curriculum which was shorter. So from 12 weeks down to 5 weeks. So it was once a week for 12 weeks. So that was 12 classes. And I made it twice a week for 5 weeks. So it's 10 classes plus lab sessions. And it's really to help small business owners deal with COVID and start marketing again. A lot of
Okay.
businesses understood that they had to become much more digital and digitally savvy because of COVID. Even restaurants needed to sell online now more because people can't go into restaurants. So this happened all across the economy. And so really to help some small business owners understand how to get online and how to market online. They say COVID is the best chief technology officer because
Right.
COVID forced all businesses to go online.
Yeah, it forced innovation. Yeah, it
Yeah,
forced
absolutely.
hardcore instant innovation. So since we're speaking about education, I know you've heard about coding boot camps. How do you think COVID and pressures like coding boot camps are going to affect the education system? Being that, like, if you join one of these coding boot camps, one of their stipulations is you don't have to pay us until you get a job that pays you over this amount of money. And when
Yeah,
and not only that, but they're like, if you come to our school, we will help you find a job in a year, not 4, not 8, not after grad school. It's after a year. We're going to help you find something, because if you don't find anything, you don't have to pay us. So what do you
yeah,
think things like COVID, where, okay, now we're not really going, like you said, some people are going to opt out of going anywhere. They're going to want to stay home where they feel safe, but they can still learn something at home. And if they have something like a coding bootcamp that says, oh, you can learn from home, and in a year, we're going to help you find a job. How does that disrupt the education system?
COVID, that's one big change COVID has made is that everybody now learned how to be online, how to be on video. Everyone learned about Zoom. Zoom stock price has gone through the roof since the beginning of this. Other video technologies as well. Online learning was already trending up, but COVID really accelerated it. A lot of people found themselves at home, unemployed, needing to skill up, reskill,
Yeah.
with a lot of time on their hands. And so they went for online education. Because of so many people online now, these online education courses were able to cut their costs or cut their prices because there's more volume. So you don't have to charge whatever you were charging. You can charge half of that and still earn revenues because there are more people trying
Yeah.
to learn stuff. Also, a lot of people are able to work from home. And so that also changes dynamics in the workplace where people are saying, well, why do I really need to go into work when I've been doing just fine working from home? Yeah, education-wise and also workplace-wise, people are online. It's a great model that you don't have to pay for your education until you get a job.
Yeah.
I think it's great. It does mean that your first year's salary, I believe, like you have to give
Yeah.
10% back to
Yeah.
that
But
institution. But
hey,
hey,
but
you got a
they're they,
job,
they've got skin in the game. It's like,
right?
we're gonna invest in you, but help us out because we helped you out, which I think is a perfect model, because it's not like that in a normal university. It's like, yeah, you can get your
Yeah,
degree and maybe you'll find something. Hopefully you do, because you've been going to school for such a long time and you grow your network in the school, and that raises the probabilities of you finding something. But if you can do that in 1 year instead of
yeah,
4 to 8, that's a big difference. And without
absolutely.
having to go into debt to do it.
Yeah. Plus, you have the power of the school helping you find a job. I mean,
Yeah,
the school itself is motivated to find you a job because that's how they get paid.
exactly.
And so the school normally is well established in the community with lots of companies and corporations and has those relationships
Yeah,
and has the finger on the pulse of who needs what kind of skill
yeah,
and is able to place their students more easily. So it's a win-win,
I think
I
so.
think.
So I hope that
Yeah.
the disruption that's coming in education ends up being a very positive one. So the next question I have is, you touched on narcissism, toxic relationships. So obviously that's relationships, and the experience you had not too long ago have been engaging your thoughts lately. So what have you learned about being in toxic relationships and how to mitigate getting yourself into situations where you're in toxic relationships?
Yeah, this has been a huge learning journey for me personally. I've had relationships before. I was married before. I'm divorced. I've had bad breakups. It happens. It's part of living. But what happened to me about a year ago was just so unusual. Like I had no words. Like I couldn't understand what had happened. There's a huge betrayal as well. it was a bad breakup that was beyond the ordinary. Normally, when things aren't going well in a couple, you talk about it, you try to figure out what's going on. There might be a period where you're trying to mend things, or you really have like a heart to heart and talk. And here, this is not what I experienced. I experienced silent treatments, like the week prior to being dumped, and I was also let go, dumped, discarded the
Yeah.
day before my birthday.
Oh,
So this
wow.
to someone I was engaged to this person, and we're trying to conceive a baby,
Hmm.
and I was discarded the day before my birthday,
Yeah.
which like I couldn't wrap my head around that. It seemed
Hmm.
unusually cruel, heartless, kind of. And also, just like a week later, pictures started popping up on my ex's Facebook with
Hmm.
a new person,
Hmm.
and like it had been so soon that mutual friends were contacting me saying, "Alex, your girlfriend is some other guy. Like, what's going on?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, there's a favorite place I used to go to, the Wynwood Yard,
Yeah.
and she showed up there with him. And so this was like, so she lives in another county, so like it took effort to come to that one. There's thousands of places in Miami to go to, but
Yes.
like within a week, she was there with the new guy. Like these bartenders knew me because that was my favorite place to go. It's back when I was drinking. So she made sure to go with a new guy over there. And the bartenders, next time I went there, they're like, Alex, like what's going on? We're uncomfortable. We saw your girlfriend with someone else. And like the bartenders didn't know what's going on. So all of this really made me look online, like what is this behavior? Like is this like what's
Okay.
going on? And I came across, like, I'm not here to diagnose anyone. I'm not
Yeah.
going to diagnose my ex, but the behaviors are narcissistic behaviors. So I started reading books about that. I started looking at YouTube videos. I joined some online communities on Facebook for victims of abuse, and that was really helpful to understand what this behavior is. And I was able to see other people previously in my life, like they exhibited similar kinds of behaviors, and it was hard to like understand. Sometimes at work, some of my ex-bosses and stuff. So it was interesting to see that nothing as serious or, as this, but it helped open my eyes to, oh, wow, like that kind of behavior really wasn't cool back then. Like, well, sure, I was going up in my career, was people pleasing, but really it was not okay. Like what they were doing was not okay. But it's this relationship made me open my eyes to like other behavior, which is not cool. And that really led me to the healing journey, which was to look inside. This is why I'm also into Carl Jung and stuff. Is like you
Yeah.
got to look inside. Like you cannot be in victim mode in your life. Like if you remain in victim mode, then you're going to start to get wrinkles and you're going to be like really sour and depressed and angry at life. And that's not really how I want to spend the rest of my years on this planet. Like I want to,
Yeah.
enjoy. Really, to forgive someone else really means to start to look inside and see, why did I get into that relationship in the first place? Why did I remain in the relationship? How come I didn't see red flags? When the red flags were there, why didn't I confront the person?
Why do you think you didn't see those red flags immediately?
I have to say that the behavior of the person, whoever that person is, in this case, my ex, they own that behavior. They want to go through life like that. That's on them. It's not good. Let them do it. It's not my problem. I'm not going to try to fix that for anyone. It's their behavior, and I don't condone it. And yet I can forgive. I can say, all right, well, look, I just happened to be come
Yeah.
across your path, and man, that
Lesson
hurt, man,
learned.
that hurt.
Yeah.
A lesson learned, man. I like burned. Like now I know where the fire is. Let me not stick my hand in fire again. But the fire, has a place in the world. The fire can continue to exist. It has its own place. But your question was about how come I didn't see the red flags. Partly it's when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, you cannot see red. You can't see
Yes.
a red flag. You're
Yeah.
wearing rose-colored. I was in love, man. I was like, this is the woman I wanted to marry and have kids with. So I easily like overlook things I shouldn't have. The learning there is, what is it about me, or like where does it come from that I overlooked, or I was people pleasing, or I was codependent? Was I enabling certain behaviors because I was just dependent on that person, and we had this dynamic, codependent dynamic. Some people call it twin flame.
Yeah.
I call it codependent. I think that there may be some legitimate twin flames out there, but I tend to think twin flames really are hard
Yeah,
lessons.
it's very
And
rare.
many times it's toxic relationships and narcissistic abuse that's going on. It's not twin flame, and twin flame is different from soulmate.
How do you think a twin flame is different from a soulmate? Like, what is the distinction for you?
Soulmate doesn't really have to be your spouse or the person you're in a romantic relationship with. Soulmate could be someone older or younger than you,
Yeah,
could be someone at work, could be a colleague or a friend. You don't have to have a romantic relationship with, but it's someone that it's like you have
that they touch
a
you in your
long-term,
soul. Yeah,
yes, and it's a long-term relationship that really lifts both of you up through the things you learn, through your honesty with each other, through the way you help each other and care for each other. That's really kind of what to me a soulmate is. Whereas a twin flame is more like a mirror. It's like, here, I'm
yeah,
not going to say a bad word, but
yeah,
here, mofo,
yeah,
like, look at this,
yeah,
like, look at this. It's like a mirror up to you, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
man, what is that?
yeah,
And the twin flame really wakes you up to lots of stuff about yourself,
yeah,
Could be good stuff too, but also stuff
yeah.
that you're not proud of.
The
It'll
y-
come
eh,
up
the
in a
yin
twin
and the
flame
yang
relationship.
of you.
Will come up in a twin flame relationship for
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
But to me, a romantic relationship isn't about sleepless nights, crying, fights. Yeah, it happens in relationships. You're fighting a lot, if you're like having sleepless nights, if you're having lots of doubts, if you your own self-worth and stuff, yeah, that's not a soulmate.
Hmm.
Maybe a twin flame, but learn your lesson quickly so you can move on.
Yeah. As we move on to the next question, I want to ask three resources that you've come across in your life that have served you well. And I know that's a hard one because we love to learn. So the resources start piling up, but it can be books, podcasts, even a song, anything. What are a few resources that have inspired you?
I believe I'm a lifelong learner. Even my experience with this, I went to like research, like what is it all
Yeah,
about? And
exactly.
I even went into Carl Jung. That comes from my father, who always was reading books and the paper, and I just had this intellectual curiosity, and I think that I learned from him to always try to learn something new. I think early in life I learned that you may not have anything in life, but you have your head, you have your brain, and so
Yes.
this is really what's going to get you through whatever next challenge is the things you know and the things you've accumulated and experienced. So I think that's one resource I have is lifelong learning and the curiosity about that. Two other resources. That's an amazing question. I haven't really thought about that.
Just let it
That's
come out of your instincts.
I've had this kind of spiritual curiosity that goes beyond organized religion. I have this duality in me that not only am I Brazilian and Finnish, like the North and the South, the
Yeah.
hot and the cold,
Yeah.
but I also have my father who was Catholic and my mom who's a Lutheran. So yeah, it's all within Christianity, but it's a really different kind of Christianity, Catholicism versus Lutheran, Protestantism,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so I was really
They
brought
were
up,
at each other's throats throughout history. those
yeah,
those those two.
yeah. And
Uh-huh.
so I happen to have gone to mass in both
Wow.
Catholic and Lutheran tradition. Eventually I then went through a period of atheism where I'm like, nah, this can't be the real thing, like for
Yeah.
whatever reason. And I came around to, yeah, we're now, I believe in something greater, but it's not a religious
Yeah.
belief. It's a kind of spiritual belief. And I acknowledge all the masters who have been on earth. They're also part of us. All of us inside have these masters in us. And I think part of the grace of life is allowing the masters to work through us. Doesn't mean I am a master, doesn't mean I'm the Buddha or whatever,
Yeah. But
but it's allowing Buddha to work through me, or allowing Jesus to work through me. I mean,
so when you say allowing the Buddha or Jesus to work through you, is it them or is it their teachings to work through you?
it's their teachings, it's
Yeah.
the behavior, it's the attitude, it's the open-mindedness, the tolerance, the humility, the being of service to
The
other people,
values.
the values. Yeah,
Because the other
yeah,
day I wrote down a quote that said, the Buddha didn't teach Buddhism.
exactly.
he was
Wayne
he,
Dwyer said that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Wayne Dwyer
Okay.
said,
I
yeah,
don't know
Jesus
where I
didn't,
got it, but I wrote
yeah,
it down. I was like, they weren't
yeah,
teaching Christianity. They were just teaching values, and these are
yeah.
values we
You're
should
teaching,
hold in
yeah,
in a good place.
right. So don't learn Buddhism,
Yeah.
be the Buddha.
Uh-huh.
Don't learn Christianity, be like Jesus.
Yeah. Or be like
Yeah,
you with those
sure.
teachings coming through you.
Yeah, you're a unique expression of
Yeah, of those
this
teachings.
miracle of the
Mhm.
teachings. Yeah.
Well, here's a question, and since you brought up your father, what would you go back and tell your 18-year-old father if you were a time traveler and you could just go back and give one seed of wisdom? What would you tell your 18-year-old father?
Oh, wow, that's deep. You know, that's a great modality. It's a great self exercise to do, is to meet your own father or mother
Yeah.
at a younger age before you were born, you
Hmm.
know. And so you can even do like, what would your 18-year-old self tell
Hmm.
your 18-year-old father? You know, you can
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
meditate and get into his space. I've done different kinds of exercises like that, but I haven't done that specific one. It's a little bit daunting to do it live. Yeah, I respect my father so much because at the age, in his early 20s, now this is back in like 1940s, like in the mid
Yeah. So
40s.
post World War II.
Yeah, it was like actually right like during like towards the end of World War II, from Rio in Brazil. Now you got to think about what flying was like back then. You didn't have these jets like today. You had like
Yeah.
turboprops and stuff. From Rio in his early 20s. Now my father was the son of a photographer, a Portuguese photographer. Now photography back then was, let's say, like more of a noble profession than today, when everyone with their iPhones can like
Yeah.
phones can take a photograph. Back then, like you had to have like one of these
The
big
big things.
cameras,
Yeah.
and you
You
had to
had to
be sit
invest in it.
still for like 10 minutes, you know, and like it
Yeah.
was the whole thing. So it was a different kind of profession. But anyway, the son of a photographer, my father flew from Rio to London to go work for the BBC World Service.
Yes.
And he worked the night shift doing the Brazilian show, the Brazilian news service for the British Broadcasting Corporation in his early 20s. So he took that whole flight alone, you know, early 20s to go and do that. His curiosity, his sense of adventure, going into a new country and doing something so new, you know, it's not like today where you just hop on a plane.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is back and during the war. So he was in London when there was rations going on.
Yeah.
The city was being bombed.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're taking me back to when he was around that age. And so there's really not much I can tell my dad, you know, because he really did some wonderful things, including that. So I'd be like, yeah, you know, it's his sense of adventure and intellectual curiosity. Some of that has come to me that I inherited.
Yeah.
And it's one of the blessings I believe my father left me with, and I'm very grateful for.
Last question. Is there any question you would like to ask me?
Man, Flip, you know, I admire you. I admire your, you know, you're now you have this incredible discipline, which I think is
Working
fantastic. I
on
mean,
it.
that's
I'm
so. This is
working
the
on
way
it.
this is why I perceive you.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you're extremely fit, and you have been for the 10 years I've known you. You know, you haven't wavered. You've been like amazingly stable in your fitness, and it's an inspiration to me to see how you keep that up and maintain it, and you're trying to motivate people to be fit. And so I admire that about you. I also admire that you have different pursuits. Like you're curious about
Yeah.
many different things. And, you know, you were even telling me about candlesticks and how to invest and how to follow candlesticks and, you know, like how to like follow the charts in
Follow the
investments. I'm
charts.
like, man, that's incredible. That's cool. Other areas as well. I've seen you speaking at Nerd Night, and that's fantastic. It was so wonderful when proposed to
Yes.
Maritza at
Uh-huh.
Nerd Night, and it was
At
a
nerd
complete
night.
surprise. It was amazing, in front of like 200 people, and you got on your knees, and you like fooled everyone because you started doing a presentation, and then you called Maritza up, and then you got on your. It was fantastic. I would say like, so how do you keep that motivation up? We come across challenges, hard times and stuff, but do you really keep up the fitness and the discipline and the motivation to be your best? How do you do that?
Well, it's something And the answer that's coming to, just the top of my head, it's something we've spoken about before. And it's the stories that you tell yourself inside your head. What are those stories, right? Should I create a story in my head that fitness or building myself to be stronger or more flexible or more stable, that's a negative thing to do? Or should I be grateful that I get to do it? That I have a body, that I am able to do all these things and try to push myself, because the alternative is probably what? Being depressed and being a victim of circumstance. And people think, oh, but working out is so hard and being disciplined is so hard. And it's like, I don't think that's as hard as being depressed. Being a victim of circumstance, that seems a lot harder of an experience to have, to me, than it is to just do the things that, when I'm done with doing them, I'm always happy that I did them. So
Right.
at the end of it all, they end up bringing happiness and joy, where if you don't do it, then you're like, well, I didn't do it today. And you start to get, the story starts to become, I guess, to use a word, is closer to a nihilist, when you're just still. And and you tell me what you think of this, because I have this concept of stillness, because in the meditation world, and maybe more the Eastern, they're like, you need to be still. But I don't think stillness exists, because even if you're still, everything around you moves, so therefore you moved. Because
Right.
nothing was in the same place from when you started. So I understand the concept of what they're trying to say when they say stillness, but stillness is an illusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I feel like I need to stay in motion even while I'm still, and that is the way I've been able to just create the habits, create who I am now, I guess.
Yeah. I like that. That's really nice. One of the things that I look and I learned recently was about dopamine and serotonin, which are neurotransmitters in
Yes.
your system and in your brain and your gut. And these really regulate how satisfied and happy you feel. Now, dopamine is associated with addictions
Yeah.
because you get kind of an immediate dopamine hit when like you drink or you use drugs, or but you can get it from your social media. You know,
Yeah.
someone
When you get
liked
a
your
like,
post.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get that, or like as I learned, you can get that from relationships. You know,
Yeah.
especially these up and down relationships, narcissistic relationships, on and off. You know, intense relationships. It's a dopamine hit every time. It's an immediate hit.
Yeah.
It's well, in those it's dopamine and
And then,
cortisol going
yeah.
back and forth. So you
Back and
know,
forth.
stress, love. But it's very addictive. But what I learned is that serotonin is a different type of pleasure.
Yeah.
And serotonin comes with time. So
Yeah.
dopamine is immediate,
Hmm.
but serotonin comes with time. And it takes time to build up the serotonin satisfaction. And that comes from discipline. And so dopamine comes from like the immediate hit of like having a drink, but serotonin comes from like not having a drink for a week. And suddenly you're like proud of yourself and you're like, man, I was able to go for a week without a drink, or a month or 2 months. I feel so proud of yourself. And that's where the serotonin is like,
Yeah. A drug like ecstasy works on the serotonin. And that's
right.
why when you're done doing ecstasy, when you do it, and I guess in a non-therapeutic type of way, after you have the 2-3 days where you feel down because your serotonin has been depleted. And it takes,
Yeah,
like you said, it takes time for it to build up. It just doesn't come back. There's a biological example right there of what you're saying,
right.
that, we use these chemicals to try to enhance that part, but you can use too much of it and then you feel like, oh man, I'm
Sure,
down because I don't have enough of this chemical that takes time to build.
sure,
So yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
And you're keeping it at that level, that high level of serotonin
I don't know if
satisfaction.
that's what I'm doing, but I know that during
Well,
this, what's interesting is that I remember 2008, the financial crisis. I was going through my divorce back then. And what I defaulted to back then was being physically active, was mountain biking, was doing all that. This time, what I've defaulted to again is being physically active, but it's mostly been yoga, meditation, and there hasn't been a day that's passed since this thing started that I haven't done yoga. And that's
Wow,
just what my
amazing.
body is telling me, that this is what you need the most of. And I still been riding my bike and lifting weights, but for sure, every single day,
That's
it's
amazing.
yoga.
I do have one more question for you. It breaks my heart because you and Maritza are now moving to Colorado, and I'm like, wow, man. So tell me about that move and what's going on and where are you gonna go and stuff.
Well, the thing is, we live in a post-COVID world now, right? So there's a lot of big question marks to the whole thing, because we didn't know this was going to happen. We've been planning this for about 5 years, and it just so happens this is what's going on during our 5th year. And it's raised a lot of questions. And we thought that, oh, maybe we'll put it off for a year. But in thinking about it, we're like, you know what? If COVID is bringing change, then let's embrace change. Let's go with the change that we had been planning for all along. Because no matter what, like right now, I still have clients, thankfully, and I'm grateful for that, but I have less. So if I need to rebuild anyway, why not rebuild in the place where we wanted to go to as it is? And it's scary. It's all the things that you would feel of, it's not stable, a stable feeling, but there's just something in my gut or my intuition that says embrace the change.
Right, right. I understand. Time for something new, but it's
I
beautiful, Colorado. So are you going to Denver or where are you gonna go?
We're going to Colorado Springs. We're going to be
Okay.
living 5 minutes away from Garden of the Gods, if you know where that is. I'll put a little picture of it
Wow.
when I do the editing of this thing so people can see what it's like. And of course, you always have a place to stay when you're in
Thank you.
Colorado.
Oh
So
man, amazing.
you're always welcome to come hang out with us whenever you like. So now we're going to wrap it up. Just tell the people where they can find all your social media, that course that you're selling.
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find online. So Alex DC on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Alex DC, um, or Alex underscore DC on Instagram. My company is Bowman.blue. So Bowman, like an archer,
Yeah.
Bowman.blue, BLUE. Those are some places to find me. Thank you.
Awesome. Time and attention are our greatest gift to each other. So thank you for spending your time and attention here with me and with whoever listens to it. So thank you very much, Alex. Look,
Hey, Maritza.
and Hercules.
Hey, how are
Hey,
you?
Hercules. Good.
What a
Great
beautiful
seeing you.
background. I love that.
Yeah, very peaceful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I miss you.
So
Miss you
yeah,
too.
let's keep figuring out how we're going to continue to move onward with more mindfulness and awesomeness. So until next time, you can find more WEYT. You can find WEYT on Instagram, spelled WEYT, on Facebook, WEYT, and on YouTube, it's WEYT Show. And actually on Instagram, it's WEYT Show as well. So that is it for
Thanks
today's
so much.
episode of WEYT. So here's to